Hello and welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Success Navigator series. This is a series where we are talking to HR leaders and HR practitioners across Asia Pacific and Middle East to dig deeper into some of the findings of Asia Pacific and Middle East's largest HR study, the Global HR SHRPA report. And we're going to look at some key trends that emerges out of the report and talk with leaders on improving practice for 2025. For a conversation today, we have Surabhi Sheshadri, ex-associate director HR at PwC. It's great to have you with us, Surabhi.
Thank you, Dhruv. Thanks for giving this opportunity. I'm in between a career transition. So my last role, like you mentioned, I was an associate director with PwC. Bring about 14 years of blended experience across industry and consulting. Worked across varied industries, cross-cultural context. In my future role, I'm also working on HR transformation, which is something I'm really excited, and thank you to you and People Matters for bringing about the Sherpa report. Went through it, some meaningful insights, but what you're doing is very important because it's just not about the report, right? What next? So how do you
Yeah,
draw
exactly.
actionable insights from it? So thanks for having me here,
Yeah,
and excited to have this conversation.
great. What it's really helpful that you come from that experience and HR transformation is key to your heart because the theme of our conversation today is addressing the broken people tech implementation journey, focusing on analytics, focusing on AI, and a
Right.
lot other aspects, and really looking at how we can make this people centric. So, thank you for joining us. And with this, let me start with my first question.
Sure.
Um, one of the key trend that we noticed from the report was tech-enabled change execution was a major challenge for HR, and this is across Asia Pacific and Middle East.
Right.
Why do you think factors like raising productivity through AI and analytics is a major is emerges as a major barrier for HR in India? And what do you think leaders should be doing better in 2025 from a implementation standpoint to overcome some of these challenges?
Sure. Very interesting question, Dhruv. Let's try and dissect the whole paradigm of HR transformation. So now, most of us, when we hear HRT, it's not about HR technology, right? It's HR transformation with tech as an enabler.
Yeah,
And if you look at technology post pandemic, largely technology has become something that has to be flexible, has to be reliable, and has to have integration capabilities. And most HCMs now are either integrated with or compatible with productivity tools, like
yeah,
Slack, G Suite, etc. So, because technology is implemented either to build productivity or to create superior employee experience. So now, no longer are these just tools and products, right? So we have to consider platforms when we look at HR technology. And this is probably one place where companies may falter. And we'll discuss what are the other areas where HR technology implementation poses a challenge. Now, these platforms, when we look at it, are increasingly becoming complex in the back end because we need to simplify things at the front end for our employees, right? So, implementation of HR technology is inherently, more complex. It is more time consuming and it requires substantial effort and resources. So some stats that I came across when I was just researching from this is a 2020 study from the Josh Bersin company where they interviewed about 700 plus companies. It states that only 15% of companies feel that their projects achieved intended goals. Only about 19% kept to project timelines. Only 20% adhered to cost budgets. Only about 11% believe they had improvements in employee experience. And I also came across this in the Sherpa report, right, where you
yeah.
alluded to the same, where you said HR leaders are acing change readiness, but when it comes to change execution, they probably are failing. Now let's understand why, right? Let's break this down.
Yeah.
Any HR transformation has about three aspects to it. One is the whole strategy and governance piece. The next is the whole operation and implementation piece. And then there is this transformation and change, which actually cuts across the whole life cycle of implementation. I think in the beginning, one of the biggest challenges would be alignment to vision. Now, what do I mean by this? Sometimes, it is just following trends in HR technology rather than understanding what is my end goal, what are the intended benefits, what is it that this HR technology change will drive for us, right? And this vision, this strategy could be anything, right? It could be productivity, and when I say productivity, it could mean people productivity, efficiency in processes and systems. It could be creating superior employee and customer experience, or it could be about business model innovation. Now, it is absolutely important to understand what is my goal before getting into selection or implementation of the technology. Number two is about defining the right metrics. Now, what do I
Yeah.
mean here? It's a continuous process, right? So this transformation, so it is not just enough to look at outcome or output parameters. It is absolutely important to continuously monitor progress, have throughput measures, and
Yeah.
make incremental changes as required. And in fact, I was surprised when I came across this stat in the Sherpa report, where you said analytics and reporting remains a missing milestone in HR
Yeah.
scaling the landscape, right? And you said 76% HR leaders focus on optimizing costs at the cost of analytics and reporting. I mean, I wasn't aware of this, but that's scary. Um, and that brings us to the next point, which is about driving ROI. Now, how do HR tech, HR leaders drive ROI? Because there's a huge pressure. These are high density investments, and it's very difficult. And even tech partners struggle to enable HR in delivering ROI. And as consultants, we on the other side, the first thing that any client would ask is, what is the ROI? And it's very difficult to
Definitely.
define, right? So benefits realization is something that is very difficult to articulate in large transformations. The other thing is, which is also very important, is any HR technology implementation has to have a long-term focus. Now, what do I mean by this? So, an entire HR technology implementation life cycle involves, conceptualization, design, planning, prototyping, testing, implementation, and obviously continuous feedback and improvement. Now, what happens is this is like building a house. When we build a home, you won't know what is missing unless you start living in it, right? So when we live in the house that we've built, we know, okay, the kitchen is not working out or there's a leakage somewhere, and you fix it. So that's how even HR technology implementation has to be looked at, right? A point in time focus on HR technology will always fall short. So a continuous transformation journey is absolutely necessary to optimize investments on technology. And I think the last challenge is about the significant level of commitment it takes, because since it is a continuous transformation, there is that significant commitment from the organization required, which means there could be delays, there could be changes, which also puts a lot of pressure, right, in terms of budget. There could be budget and energy fatigue within the organization. And
Yeah.
ultimately, adoption is what drives success of technology implementation, right? So you might have implemented all of the modules, the processes are working, the technology is running, is functional, but if there is no adoption, it's still a failure. Now, hence training, change management efforts are absolutely important. And in one of my consultant stints, I was working with a promoter based organization in enhancing productivity. Now, when we talk about productivity, it is an interaction between people, process, and technology. Now, what I observed there, and this is a governance problem, is that some budget approvals, or material cost approvals, etc. What they would do, interestingly, is that first there was a mail approval, right? And
Yeah.
then they would take a printout of that. attach it to the actual physical copies of whatever proofs, etc., get a physical signature, and that document would travel all over India, right? Then it would come back to source, and then they had to replicate the workflow on SAP S4HANA because
Yeah.
that's the system that they had implemented. Now, is this actually increasing productivity? No, it's actually repleting
Yeah.
productivity.
Yeah.
So, hence, adoption is key. It's not about just technology itself, but people using it, and how do you integrate it into the workflow? Otherwise, there'll be multiple parallel workflows like this, which doesn't help. So,
Great. Great.
how do we then address the problem? Just 6 steps. One is to define strategy, identify success criteria, measure and improve. Second is to have a mix of internal experts so that there is ownership, there is a fit for purpose solution, and also bring in external experts so that they give you the market insights, benchmark, etc. Three is to have simplify the HR technology architecture in the first place. Four is to build capabilities in house which are future focused. Five is to design people analytics in the flow of work. And six
Sure.
is to focus on human centered design to use personas, use journeys to create that employee experience. So I think, according to me, these are what I think are the challenges and how to um, address this implementation challenge.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that point. And I think for our listeners here, there's a lot to take away in the sense of first looking at problems and maybe even identifying some of those problems that they face internally, but also
Mhm.
then looking at certain solutions that you suggest. So thank you for that, Surbi. I think one question, I mean, you spoke about commitment as being maybe a challenge and how that needs to be really addressed. What we also found is then the role of change management that comes in is to sort of like bring the entire company together. And
Sure,
for HR related tech transformations, it is up to HR who needs to sort of like do that, and HR leaders who need to do that. So if you had to
sure,
look at maybe the next 12 to 18 months, what aspects of the change management journey do you recommend HR leaders to strengthen so that
sure.
the AI and analytics implementation journey and adoption journey can be improved?
Sure, sure. True, and it is said that effective change management is the key to effective HR technology implementation. So there's no doubt about it. And again, in my experience, both as a consultant and a client, there are few areas where I think change management can be bolstered within organizations to drive this drive the effectiveness of implementation. I think the first thing is, generally change management as a topic is too academic, right? So it is done as a theoretical exercise largely. I mean, I'm generalizing here, but very rarely do we see that change practitioners or consultants get on ground, understand the nuts and bolts of the change involved, understand the nitty gritties of the technology being implemented. So it is really important as change practitioners to connect the dots between the whole change strategy to getting down to the battlefield to understand what are the tactical changes that need to be made. Those tactical changes are as important as the whole change strategy. So I think that is one, and hence organizations, when scouting for change practitioners or building those capabilities within organizations, it's important to not look at certifications or training like ProSci, etc., but look at the experience that a practitioner brings in understanding project management or understanding the technology that you're implementing. So that's one. The second, thing that can be bolstered is to have a holistic, comprehensive change plan. Now, what happens is HR technology projects, the timelines are very difficult to maintain. There are delays, there are multiple iterations happening, and typically even the IT teams or the technology teams typically see change practitioners as plug and play coming in, doing a lot of communication, training activities, and just walking out. I think
Sure.
that's not the correct approach. Mere communication or training will not help. And it is absolutely important to work very closely with the impacted group of individuals or teams to understand the as is to be. Hence, what are those role changes or job changes that are happening? Understand and implement org design changes, and what could be the reskilling that is required within the organization, right? What is changing? How do we make these tactical changes happen? And most often than not, organizations don't do the whole organization change readiness analysis or a stakeholder analysis mapping to understand how to identify and predict points of resistance and how to prevent.
Sure.
So
Sure.
if we can predict that, to the best possible extent, it can be prevented, so by involving stakeholders early, identifying allies in business, so it's absolutely important to look at an organizational analysis. And the third is to also look at benefits realization, defining what is the outcome of each of my module of change, right? So that by end of the implementation we can have something tangible to measure and say, okay, we achieved this much, or this is something that we need to redo, retrain employees, or redeploy some certain processes, etc. And I think the other thing that happens is that change has to be integrated with transformation. Like I said, it can't be looked at as an isolated process or a skill. And change management has to start at the beginning of the tech transformation and not somewhere in between, right? So they have to be part of the initial strategizing, and it is not about it's not a standalone skill. So
Yeah.
change practitioners need to understand technology, need to understand process reengineering, need, if you're implementing SAP S4 HANA, you better know SAP S4 HANA, right? So that's how I see that. And it is also important to know when to pivot, because standard frameworks, tools are good. They are, they make it scalable, they're replicable. But it also is important to understand that the same framework and tools and approach doesn't apply across contexts. So it is absolutely important to understand how to customize the whole approach and strategy to the respective technology or the respective organization as well. So that's also important. And the last thing is also about looking at alternative skill building. I know I have harped on this a lot, but when we look at change management, it is not only about change management certification, but we also need to look at the HR technology itself: Workday, SAP, Darwinbox, or a project management certification, or a agile implementation certification. So it's important to think out of the box and build those additional capabilities as
Right.
change
Right.
practitioners.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for Surabhi for looking at change management, not just from maybe, as you say, like not just an academic practice, but maybe rooting it into how we can actually improve and how companies can maybe really look at making change management a key part of their implementation journey. That actually brings me to my last question, and we did you have touched upon it maybe perhaps a couple of times where we've spoken about skills.
Hmm.
But it was interesting to note how somewhere around 57% of HR leaders in the People Matter Sherpa report
Hmm.
said that they are going to prioritize functional effectiveness and tech
Hmm.
skills in the coming 12 to 18 months. So if
Hmm.
you had to maybe stay upon on that skills aspect and look at it holistically as we've done in this conversation, not just solely from a tech skill standpoint or solely from a soft skill standpoint, what are some skill
Hmm.
shifts that do you think are necessary or is going to become necessary as more and more businesses want to invest in AI, want to invest in analytics? What are
Sure.
some skills for HR that you see becoming super relevant?
Sure, sure. I think my favorite topic here, and it's absolutely important to look at one critical aspect of any digital transformation is digital upskilling, right? And when we talk about digital upskilling, it is beyond technology itself. So it is also important to learn tools and process workflows in the light of technology implementation. But it is also important to build some of these transferable capabilities which are absolutely essential in the digital world. And these could be things like multidimensional sense making, learning agility, which is really important, or it could be boundaryless collaboration, innovation and change, so on and so forth, right? And when we talk about a digital transformation, the role that HR plays is very critical. Now, what happens is HR is responsible for building these capabilities within the organization, across the organization, but also HR for HR, right? Building HR capabilities as well. So
Yeah,
it's a it's
exactly.
a dual hatted role that HR needs to play here. And when we look at certain personas in terms of digital capabilities, one is digital users, right? Which is everybody, literally everybody in the organization who needs to understand the functionality and who are users of the technology. So that is something that is absolutely hygiene. Now there is another elite section of capabilities within the organization, which is the digital experts. Now when we talk about digital expertise, we are talking about specialized skill sets, something like a prompt engineer or a data scientist, or a project engineer, technology implementation partners, etc. Now that's also important. But a large part of digital transformation is driven by leaders who are neither the users nor the experts, and this is what we call as dot connector capabilities. Now, these dot connector capabilities are absolutely essential to translate the whole, digital transformation strategy into actionable, projects, day-to-day activities, goals, etc. So I think this is where leaders need to understand the potential of technology, and make that happen through influencing,
Sure.
through those transferable capabilities. Now, I think we've already spoken about a couple of capabilities in our previous, interaction, which is basically HR technology expertise, which is to understand the HR platforms that you're implementing. The other thing that we also discussed is the change management skills, right? Which is
Yeah.
the ability to influence people to drive results, to drive adoption. So I think these two are absolutely critical. In addition to these two, I think it's also very important for HR to build capabilities in emerging technologies like AI, ML, predictive analytics across the talent lifecycle. Now, when I say AI, there is Gen AI, there's this chatbots, conversational AI, LLMs, especially in the context of the whole skill-based organization shift that organizations are now looking at. The transitioning from job-based organization to a skill-based economy. The other thing I think is data literacy. It's absolutely essential that HR needs to understand, analyze, interpret HR data to drive
Right.
decisions. And,
Right.
understanding metrics across the life cycle from hire to retire, and using that to link HR strategy to drive business outcomes is absolutely non-negotiable nowadays, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um, I think another feather in the cap would be to learn the whole human-centered design to drive employee experience. Now, how do you use HR technology to create a personalized, customized, seamless employee experience? How do you look at real-time feedback to improve workplace, culture? I think that's also really absolutely essential. And the last is, and not the least at all, is learning agility, a continuous learning mindset. So it's absolutely important to stay up to date with the HR trends, what is happening on new trends, tools, updates in HR technology. right? Participating in conferences, certifications, workshops, signing up on platforms like People
Yeah.
Matters, right? So to be up to date on HR innovation. So that's, I think, absolutely essential. And HR technology is a space that is continuously evolving every day. So it is absolutely important to also evolve with the times, right? And I really like a quote which says, in this context, be like a river, always flowing, always adapting, and always carving a new path. Stagnation is the death of growth. So I think
Definitely.
that continuous learning mindset is absolutely essential here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Surbi. And it sort of like encapsulates the entire approach that HR maybe really needs to, although there is awareness of it, it really needs to like double down in the coming 12 to 18 months.
Sure.
So thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our listeners. And stay tuned for another interesting conversation in the Sherpa Success Navigator series. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruv.